Hey guys, Tarke here, and I wanted to give one final pre-mapping update, so if you're here only for the mapping content, next video guys, it will come tomorrow. So how is the build coming along? So we got it to 78 today, played it a little bit off stream, my internet was being a bit dippy, but it's actually progressing pretty nicely as I knew it would. We have made some overall changes to the build, but first we'll cover up some of the most recent gear updates, because we've gotten a lot of gear updates today, because we've gotten to the point where we can actually equip all of our gear. We've gotten pretty lucky, and we have changed the tree, but let's start off. So I managed to 6-link a Lionized Glare earlier. I really wasn't expecting to 6-link a Lionized Glare, and this is actually a build which doesn't really need a 6-link too much. The reason why I say too much is, as this is a non-crit build, our single target setup is kind of fine on a 5-link. It does benefit from a 6-link, but our single target setup being Barrage, Void Manipulation, Slower Proj, Added Chaos, Pierce, that's kind of like the core double dipping crazy stuff. Obviously a 6-link would help, but that's like the main focus. So we're actually using the 6-link in this case for our AoE setup. Since we do have a separate AoE and single target setup, we are using Lightning Arrow. Again, Lightning Arrow plus Barrage clears faster than just Tornado Shot. You use just Tornado Shot when you're using a Combs Heart, you don't have 2 5-links, or you're using like a 5 or 6-link Frenzy Cast on hit setup. So we're using Lightning Arrow with GMP, Pierce, Added Chaos, Void Manipulation, and Slower Proj. And again, the whole build is about stacking flat Chaos damage. We're not scaling Wed, we're not scaling physical projectile attack damage. And the reason why I'm using the Lionized Glare, because a lot of people still seem confused by this, it's a bow which attacks very quickly, has decent base fizz. That doesn't really matter. It's a very fast attacking bow, which has hits can't be evaded. Because this is a non-crit build, having this means we don't need to get RT on the tree. Not having to get RT on the tree saves us a lot of points. It saves us a minimum of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It saves points, even if you root up this way, even with a 3-point jewel here, it still saves you like 4 or 5 points. It's just pretty nice. And since Reach of the Council is pretty gutted, if you have a Legacy Reach of the Council, it'll be better than a Lionized Glare. But I don't have a Legacy Reach of the Council because I haven't got a mirror lying around, and that's how much they're going for. So yeah, that's why we use this bow. Otherwise, the only real important piece of gear is a Drill Neck. Drill Neck is still amazing for raw double dipping. This gives you 50% generic proj damage, double dips. It has attack speed on that, has some life, it has a little bit of evasion. The only things which can really replace that in this kind of a build, which doesn't scale off Wed, you can potentially use Rigwald's Quills. I do actually have a Rigwald's Quills put to the side, which I'm selling to a friend who's going to try out Spork Totems, never forget it. You could potentially do this, have a Fork instead of Pierce. It saves you a skill link, it saves you some points on the tree. But as we previously mentioned, because this is a non-crit build, we're kind of already starved on links which scale our damage. So you'd probably end up still using the Pierce support anyway, just for the more damage, because, you know, it double dips and stuff. So really, it would only save you 3 points on the tree. But if you already have 50% chance to Pierce, the Fork becomes less effective, and this has life on it. Basically, Draw Neck is still good. Draw Neck is still also very cheap, meaning they're easy to corrupt for the +1 arrow. You do want the +1 arrow. It's very big for the Barrage single target. When you get it, you just put 1 extra point here. The other big thing, you want jewelry which looks like this. So if you need resists, resist base. Ideally, you go for a coral base just to get as much raw HP as possible. High life, % chaos damage, flat chaos damage, strength, and some resist. So this is like insane. I picked this up for a couple of chaos. I bought a few, like, I crafted some envy jewelry myself and bought some. So this amulet I crafted myself. It cost me 2 chaos rolls to get it. Essence of envies, they go for like 1C each for the lowest tier. To be honest, the difference between the lowest tier and the highest tier, unless you have crazy money, just spam buy the cheap ones and just throw those in. It's like a chaos of pops. It's like chaos spamming an item. Just throw it onto whatever base you need. We need int, so having a 55 int Ami with % chaos damage with a bunch of flat life is pretty good, and we can slap on a missing resist. And then this one is just a whatever ring that I'm looking to replace. I have got some rings set to the side. I have this unset ring. The reason why I want an unset ring is I wasn't expecting to get a 6-link, right? So because I got a random 6-link, I lost a aura slot, or basically I lost a gem slot, which I thought I would have for an aura. So an unset ring is just an easy way of fitting in other stuff. And also, I plan this build around being MoM. I'm currently not MoM. I'll explain that in a bit. But basically, something sort of like this, which I will eventually just put this in here. but right now it doesn't work out with my int requirements, so that's something I'll work out in the next 2 levels. Something kind of like this, but just pick whatever base you can, just throw a bunch of things on it, and you'll be okay. You can see I bricked a couple, but it is what it is. So, percent chaos, flat chaos, most important. Get a cheap bow, get a cheap quiver, seems good. Chest piece, cherubims. Now, when I made this build, sorry, I'm tracking items. When I made this build, cherubims were like an alc each. I've done very well with cherubims recently. So, at the start of the league, I was just tracking cherubims, whatever. There was like a near perfect one. I was buying them for like anywhere. I think the most I paid was 6 chaos for a literally like perfect one, which I then sold later on in the league. But I've been buying them for like 1C, 2C, 1C, 2C. Then Mathel started playing with them. A few people started playing them. There was Bay class, which got a bunch of views. We were talking about how stupid this is. So sorry guys, blame Mathel, don't blame me, or blame me, don't blame Mathel. But basically these are expensive now. And these are kind of like, getting a bad one costs you about 6C, getting a very good one costs you in hardcore upwards to like 30 to 50C. For reference, if anyone wants to buy one, I have got a pretty good one for sale with 3 blues. I don't know what the fuck you do with one with 3 blues, but it's there if anyone needs a 3 blue one in hardcore. But anyway, the reason why this is so good is it gives you very high percent chaos damage, this double dip, so it's an insane scaling chest, which also happens to give up to 100 life. The increased life leech per second currently doesn't do anything for us because we are Volpacked. If you decide to not play with Volpacked however, then obviously 100% increased life leech per second is pretty powerful. I'm still using a gold rum, and everything else is just whatever. Snakebite to get poison. Ideally, you'd eventually get one corrupted with either temp chains on hit or vulnerability on hit. This makes your life much easier if you're only going single cast, but you want to eventually go dual cast when you get a corrupted pair of gloves. A decent belt in the fact that it has a bunch of resist. The WED on there doesn't do anything for me. The ES on there doesn't do anything for me. You basically want this kind of belt, but the end game version, which is like 150 life and then like just 340 res. And then my boots are again just like whatever boots, which I needed to fix my resist at the time. You want these boots, but with an actual life roll and good resist. I don't need the dex. I literally just pinch these off another character. This is like your budget flask setup. Alchemist Quicksilver, so you run around quick. Silver Flask, because clear speed. You can choose either Stibnites or Basalt. I used to always run Basalt. I pretend to prefer Stibnites these days. The things with Stibnites is Stibnites help you against elemental damage. Basalts only help you against fizz damage. Basalts are also awkward just from a charge point of view. I think I've got one to show you. So, by default, they consume 40 out of 60 charges on use when you only get 1 use. They have a decently long duration. And normally you roll them for one of 2 things. You either roll them for increased effect, because increased effect is very powerful with this, but then you're still only on 1 use, unless you have reduced flask charges used on the tree or on a belt. That feels kind of wonky. So if you're not doing that, you then roll it for 2 uses, but then you're not getting the Alchemist, and it's still like, eh. Or you can just have a Stibnite, and Stibnite has insane uptime, is really good for stuff like bleed removal or curse immunity. It's just like insane, it's always active. You can spam it like crazy, it's just good. In its Xeri's Promise, if you had a Sindri Birth, you would run a Sindri Birth instead of Stibnite, maybe then drop the Xeri's, but work it out. You'd have both in a perfect world, and then 1 life pot. Have a second life pot just floating around in your inventory. If you like running 2 life pots, you don't feel safe, run 2. The good thing about having 1 floating in your inventory is if you're mapping and you encounter a trial, you can quickly equip your second life pot, kill a few things, get the charges, and run the trial with 2. Running trials with only 1 health potion with a build with Volpacked feels fucking terrible, so don't do that. Now, how is the skill tree changed? This is very different to what I originally proposed. Well, okay, a few things have happened. So this was my original idea. This is what I originally proposed, and the people who were recommending this build to me, because when I first theorized this build a week ago, people rolled this, cleared loads of corners, and said, dude, this is so good, it's so tanky. So my original idea was I wanted to use a Lionized Glare. Lionized Glare has mana. These builds don't scale very well with auras. You'll see I'm actually using haste just to boost my clear speed, because I'm not a King of the Forest build or a Queen of the Forest build, since I'm not using the chest, obviously, since I'm using cherubims. Grace is kind of whatever. One other quick thing I will just quickly mention. One thing which is kind of nice about this current setup, and it's one thing I will do when I get the unset ring, because you're not dependent on running Grace, you actually have a lot of flexibility for auras. So if you want just raw defense, you can run Grace, but since we're using Lionized Glare, Grace hasn't helped us at all against Reflect. Because we mostly only do Chaos damage, and our Lightning Arrow is 50% lightning anyway, we are completely Reflect immune with this build. Like, Reflect isn't an issue, so Grace doesn't help us in that sense. Grace only helps us for the times that we're face tanking. But you don't face tank that much, we already have Acro, we already are a range build, so it feels a little bit lackluster in this build, so I would recommend using either Mind Over Matter, Haste, Arctic Armor, a Blasphemy, or Purities. And the reason why I go Purities is if you can fit it in, you can quite easily run 2 Purities, or like a 50% Aura and a Purity. As long as you have at least like 15% of your mana unreserved, you'll never have any mana issues. The problem is when you're off screen, which you do a lot with these kinds of builds, if you only have like 1 or 2% mana unreserved, that feels terrible. You want enough that you can always like shoot 3 or 4 times off the screen. So I would recommend having at least like 10% unreserved. But anyway, if you're really struggling with gear, you can run a Purity. If you know that you're running a particular kind of content, like you're going to be running, you know, Breaches, you can very easily fit in a Fire Purity or a Lightning Purity, depending on what you're doing. It's a nice thing to do. It makes gearing a lot easier. Just consider that. But anyway. So this was the original idea, and when I was leveling, I actually followed this tree. Now, the issue with this setup is brilliant once you already have good gear. Like, once you have gear with, like, the flat chaos, once you have a level 21 added chaos gem and everything, then you don't need that much, like, crazy double dip and scaling, and you just go off of crazy jewels. Like, you get jewel stat, chaos damage, projectile damage, percent life jewels. Get a bunch of jewels, get increased duration scales the fuck out of your poison. Get Jewel Curse Temp 1, scales the fuck out with Skidding Runes, and your damage is fine, and then you just get the survivability of Mind Over Matter. Now, one of the things which I found that I don't like about that sort of playstyle is Mana Sustain. Mana Sustain, once you get specced into a few like mana nodes like Arcane Chemistry, maybe Primal Spirit, a few points over here, get this 3-point Jewel, etc. It feels okay. But in a world where you don't have its Zeri's Acuity, and you're like, dude, why is he talking about its Zeri's Acuity? With its Zeri's Acuity in a Berserker build, you fit Mind Over Matter in it as best as you can. Now, the problem is no one really has in its Zeri's Acuity. Very few people have them outside of Standard, or the very, very rich people. But if you can somehow get your hands on one, like if you happen to have one, or you farm the shit out of Uber at Zeri, or you just buy one, save one up, it is amazing. Because its leech applies instantly. This is all leech, so mana leech and life leech. And it happens to have 80 int. So it solves all of your int problems, has life, and gives you instant mana leech. Unless you have already very good damage, by going up to MoM, you miss out on most of your damage scaling, right? So you need to have either very good DPS starting off, or you need a bunch of mana nodes, which you won't have at low level, which is why I avoided MoM. MoM is like you do it at a higher level, because it doesn't work until you have the support, like stuff like Arcane Chemistry, Primal Spirit, because you need some natural mana regen. Because when I was leveling with MoM, one of the things I found would happen is in the scenario of me like off-screening, or taking a big hit as I kill the pack, I then have no mana. And until you have like a ramped up mana regen, it just feels kind of shitty. So I wouldn't recommend MoM early on. But yeah, anyway. So this was the tree that I originally planned around. This is what I've decided with. Now, the reason why I've gone with this tree, there are a few things you can tweak about it. You do have access to 3-point jewels. If you have a good 3-stat jewel, so if you have a jewel with 2 like generic double dipping mods and a life roll, take a 3-point jewel over going into like Shadow Start and Ranger Start. If you've only got like 2-stat jewels, then don't go with the 3-pointers. But if, for example, you had 3 jewels which look like this, chaos damage, max life, projectile damage, just get all of the 3-point jewels, ignore this shit, so go 3-point jewel, 3-point jewel, 3-point jewel, and then fill in these nodes. You'll get way more damage that way, you'll also get a lot more survivability. It's more expensive, but I mean, they're not even that expensive. To give you an idea of the jewels that I'm rocking on this character, all of these jewels I've bought and regaled them myself. So this cost me 2C, and then I regaled the int. Not amazing, but it's okay. This, like 1 to 2C, and I regaled the minion life. Okay, so far I'm not really like showing off the powers of the regal, but it's the difference of something like 3C on a jewel and something like 15 to 25C. I've also been flipping a lot of jewels. So what often happens is like you buy a generic increased damage max life jewel if you hit anything on there which isn't like use, you then sell it to 10 to 15C, and it happens. I've been selling jewels all day. This, I hit the attack and cast speed, and then I have a few more lying around, but so I hit this one earlier. This hit Fizz, which is obviously pretty nice. So I can quite easily sell this for like 15C, and this will make back the crafted cost of my last like 5 jewels. And I've got this one that I'm waiting to regal. I just haven't bought any more regals recently, and I've got a few more lying around in random tabs or that I've sold. And like all of these have come from like hitting random things. So this game attacks you while holding a shield. It's decent. You'll easily get 10C for that. This is something which is like, alright, hit totem damage. Fizz. It hit the Fizz damage with 100 melee weapons. Pretty good for like a Mortem Morso Spec Throw. This one hit totems. Okay, that one's going to be a bit of a hard to sell. And this one hit lightning res, which is decent for someone who needs lightning res, or a build I play myself. But anyway, you get the idea. Regal jewels, guys. It's decent. So yeah, 3-stat jewels is one difference you can do if you have the currency to support it. The other thing you can do is you can change the routing. So you can see I routed up this way to get access to Hired Killer and Harrier. It does also give you access to another 3-point jewel. An alternative thing you can do is routing along the bottom here. Now from a base routing along the bottom, also if you get this 3-point jewel, this routing becomes more efficient. Which is just, it's a matter of points. This is fine. Like this routing versus this routing is very even, very early on. The only reason this pulls slightly ahead is getting Hired Killer and Harrier. The second you have a good jewel, you go for this 3-point, then this becomes like more point efficient. And it also gives you access to Dippy into Duelist, Fury Bolts, Life. This is something you do more at a much higher level. Obviously, you're not going to have a 121 build, like you cut points elsewhere. But just to give you guys an idea, you can route it slightly differently if you want to. I kind of like this routing along the top though. And another thing which is kind of nice about this routing is just Harrier feels so good, man. Getting attack speed is good because it makes your build feel smoother. Cast speed helps your Wither totem. Movement speed is clear speed. I just like this way. But yeah, consider different routings. You could say, what Tarke, if you're going into this middle section, why come to the top at all? Skill effect duration does scale really hard, and you want to travel up to Sun Life anyway, so you're already close to it. Gives you a little bit of resist, which is nice early on. Gives you access to a decent 3-point proj damage jewel. Being in this upper section is like good. And these Life and Mana Flask nodes, I've kind of grown to like them. I have a weird relationship with Profane Chemistry. Sometimes I love it, and then I'll avoid it for like 3 leagues. I'm back into enjoying Profane Chemistry, especially when you stack it with something like Herbalism. It's a lot of increased life recovery from flasks. It's sort of whatever. Phase Acro versus not giving Phase Acro. Normally I only ever get Phase Acro, but I'm trying to skip Phase Acro for 1 or 2 characters to see if I think it's worthwhile. But personally, I still think Phase Acro is the way to go. I've rambled way longer in this video than I meant to, but anyway. Basic update. The character feels good. Surprisingly, 40% more damage is 40% more damage. We'll do some mapping all day tomorrow, get it up to mid-80s, high 80s, and then we'll get into like this serious nitty-gritty build showcasey kind of stuff for the people who've been wanting a build showcase on this character. I'm Tarke. This is Bear MTX with a fancy hat and a fiery fox, and can we just let's just take a moment to appreciate the zoo. The zoo's feeling a little bit barren. One thing, just completely off topic, I really dislike the coastal hideout because all of your pets, they like run down into the shipwreck and they sort of get lost. Like half of my zoo is like just locked down here. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put like a gate here to keep this top section nice and pet heavy. Because it feels bad, Ben, when half your pets are like AFK in the fucking sea. Like, look, what the fuck is this? See? Like, my pet menagerie was looking very empty, but it's because they're all hiding in the fucking waters. Like, I don't want my pets fucking drowning. Feels bad, man. So anyway, I think tomorrow we might also have to do a little bit of hideout decoration. I'm Tarke. I rambled too much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.